Hello. Last video I explained how to set up DFCI on PC, and if you've done that, you are now in the top 100 players in North America. However, when you're getting into Dengeki, whether it's as a spectator or player, you're going to notice that there's a lot of systems in the game. There's a bunch of theory behind all of them, but rather than go into all that, I'm going to give you a layer 0 flowchart of what to follow so you can enjoy the meatier parts of the game. This video is assuming you're familiar with the super duper basics of fighting games, so if you're not, it might make more sense to start with this video from Tech Chasers, which goes over numpad notation and different HUD elements in the game. Your number one priority during round 1 in DFCI is to Power Blast and to do it as soon as possible. While you are in a true neutral state, you press A, B, and C to Power Blast. If you press that while in block or hit stun, you're going to get an escape blast, and pressing it in hit stop will give you a combo blast. Two blasts I'm going to explain later, but I mention it now because you are specifically aiming for a Power Blast, so make sure that you are in a true neutral state. On a successful Power Blast, a burst animation will play and you enter the power up state where you generate meter as indicated where the blast icon is below the HP bar. In DFCI, meter is essential for dealing damage and extending your combos, so this meter building power up state is important to enter as soon as you can. Power Blast is fairly low commitment and it's being done early enough in the game that the reward on your Power Blast being punished is fairly low. Due to this, you can Power Blast as the round starts, on wake up after the first knockdown, after a combo, as an anti-air, just any situation that comes to mind in the game, as Power Blast is +0 on block and has invuln until recovery that can blast the opponents away on hit. Power Blasting itself gives you 1 bar immediately, as well as passive meter generation, healing, and increased damage during the power up state. But if your Power Blast ends up hitting the opponent, you instead receive 2 bars with those same status effects. For the most part, it's really hard to do this Power Blast in round 1 wrong. There's 2 major ways to do it wrong, with one being to wait too long, to where you fall behind your opponent in terms of building meter. The second way to do it wrong is in spots like active pressure, where you could easily enter block stun or get hit, which may give you an accidental escape blast. This can be game ruining and checkmate you due to the fact that escape blasts enter an escape blast debuff state, where your blast percentage text turns red, indicating greatly reduced blast generation, and you will not have any of the meter you needed to build by initially power blasting in the round. Since hitting the opponent with the Power Blast would give you an additional bar of meter, and meter is the key to closing out rounds smoother and faster, round 1 ends up having its own minigame where the lingering requirement for both players to Power Blast as early as possible creates a standoff where both sides want to do it safely and avoid being punished in recovery after doing so. Likewise, both players want to avoid trying too hard to call out each other's bluff, as the opponent getting an extra bar for hitting you with their Power Blast will give them a much easier time to steamroll you later on in round 1. Once the power-up state that comes after Power Blasting is over, you're going to notice that your blast immediately starts regenerating again. To spend the meter that you generated, you can do EX moves for 1 bar, and for each EX move that you perform while your blast is generating outside that power-up state, you're going to get 10% of your blast gauge back. The other means of spending meter works slightly different with regards to giving you blast back for each bar of meter spent. Your Climax Art, which is a 2 bar, high damage dealing super, ends up giving you 0% blast back. Doing an assist cancel, which is pressing the assist button while in hit stop, also gives you 0% back. However, the invulnerable, lower damage Rambu super ends up giving you 20% back. It's worth noting that the blast percent refund with meter spent does not begin until after you are out of the power up state. Since you don't get blast refund until after that state is over, you want to wait to spend your meter until you're out of the power up state. There's some more obvious exclusions to this rule, such as having 4 to 5 bars during the power up state and being nearly maxed out on meter, but in general, you want to try to wait until after it's done. That way, you can cycle your blast back in faster to use it again later on in the round. That pretty much covers the most complicated part of Dengeki Gameflow, which is related to blast. So now we're going to skip straight to when you are getting hit and when you land a hit. So to start, let's talk about when you finally hit the opponent and do a combo. Now ideally, for almost all of the characters in the game, almost all of them, after you land a hit, you will want to spend only 1 bar of meter on your confirm. There are some outliers, but once again, to make things simple, you want to spend 1 bar into either a hard knockdown situation or 1 bar into a combo extension that ends in an air tech, air chase situation. Now the most obvious reason to spend 1 bar is because not only are we getting more reward and we're moving our blast cycle forward by 10%, but by not spending more than 1 bar, we lessen the opponent's reward from the game's stronger comeback mechanics that I'm going to explain later on. Most notably, one of those mechanics is that the lower your HP is in this game, the faster your blast regenerates. Now, of course, this all assumes that the round is going your way, but let's say you're fighting the most broken character in the game, Yuki, and you are the player getting hit and losing. There's a few things to note as the losing player in DFCI. One is that the player with less health in a round is shown via this life deficit indicator. Normally in DFCI, if you input push block, a defensive mechanic, it's going to cost you half a bar. However, the player with the life deficit can push block for free 100% of the time. Likewise, the lower your health gets during the round, the faster that your blast is going to regenerate. This means that if you kill your opponents too fast, or in our case as a loser, if they spend too much at once to kill us without building enough meter to actually do it and close out the round, the tables can easily turn in our favor. The final comeback mechanic is known as universal potential, but I'm going to say this for a little bit later as it ties into the end of the round. Now ideally, after 1 to 2 combos, depending on your character's reward or the openings that you get, your opponent's going to be around 45 to 60% HP. Just depends on the combo itself. And at this point, in order to close out the round, whether you're playing a blue or red trump character, your next confirm needs to find some way to route into a trump install. When you go into trump state, the game's nuances and attack angles change entirely. You can call your assist with no startup at all, you can do it while in the air, and you can do it while inputting down back to block. And in general, your offensive threat becomes much higher with much more real mix-up situations. This allows you to create situations that either close out the round or force the opponent to use their trump card. The high damage that red trumps do on hit as a combo ender, and the meter generation and combo extensions that blue trumps get, will allow you to kill on the next hit with the remaining resources you have up until this point to close out the round or threaten a checkmate situation. Something worth noting is that you start the game with 2 trump cards. You want to try to only have to spend 1 per round, and as such, timing this trump install is very important and is also tied to a gauge that is displayed next to the trump card icons. Getting hit in any manner, whether it's by the opponent directly or from an escape blast, lowers the gauge faster. However, doing a power blast during this trump state actually increases the gauge by 25%. As you approach the end of the round, the player losing, or perhaps both of you, are probably going to have your blast back. If a player has their blast back, they can then escape blast out of kill combos by pressing A, B, and C as you try to close out the round. That is, unless you can put them in a burst lock state before they can react or get their blast back. To lock your opponent out of being able to use an escape blast, you perform an EX move, which some characters can link into more EX moves, and all characters can cancel their EX moves into either one of their supers or a combo blast. Combo blast, which is done by pressing A, B, and C in hit stop or block stop, gives you 1 bar of meter, and on hit, it's going to launch the opponent and lock them out of their escape blast. This is great for confirming checkmate anti-air situations, for getting a missing bar that you need to kill the opponent, or for even allowing weaker characters to use 1 more EX move before they go into a super. If the opponent doesn't have a green blast icon, something that is selected at character select, then Combo Blast can even invuln through their escape blast. If you are the person in the round-ending kill confirm situation, the person getting hit, if your opponent is being greedy and not using EX moves to kill you, then by hitting A, B, and C, as stated earlier, you're going to do an escape blast. This escape blast launches the opponent to the direction of where their back is facing, and if it is round 1, and or your burst is not ignited, which I'll explain later, then escape blast will put you in the escape blast debuff state, as explained earlier. In this state, your blast will generate very slowly, as said earlier, so you should avoid doing this unless you recognize that you're in a kill situation, or unless you notice that your opponent is being greedy, and by escape blasting, you're going to enter universal potential, the game's most broken comeback mechanic. Once you fall below 30% health, you're going to enter the universal potential state for an entire 20 seconds. Your HP bar will turn purple to show that you are in it, and your damage is increased by 10%. If it is match point in round 2 and you lost round 1, it instead increases by 20% for 20 seconds. It's worth noting that offensive buffs don't stack, so this does not stack with other character or assist potentials. It is because of this 20 seconds of increased damage on top of the other comeback mechanics such as increased blast generation that earlier I stressed the need to trump install to close out rounds when your opponent gets to around half health. If you try to be greedy with your resources, or if you overspend your resources, it's going to greatly benefit the player that is losing in DFCI. This is a very important thing to play around, and is a part of what enables some of the weaker characters to become a strong threat via comeback mechanics. Whether it's round 1 or round 2, when the round ends, the player who lost the previous round is going to gain 1 trump card. This is assuming they don't currently have 2 available, which is the max. The game also then enters an ignition selection state. From here, you can choose to ignite your character, your assist, or your blast. A player ignition enhances your attack and defense values slightly. A blast ignition does the most, and is going to allow your blast to recover 50% from where it is currently at the end of the round. And in general, your blast is now going to build up even faster. Likewise, if you've escape blasted in the previous round that just ended, you will have the escape blast debuff removed, and now when you escape with an ignited blast, you no longer receive that debuff. Assist ignition is pretty much the only niche ignition. It reduces startup call time and recovery time, and this only really matters for Rusian, so you probably should not put too much focus on it. That's a lot of words, but basically, in an overwhelmingly majority number of cases, you will want to ignite your blast at the end of a round once per game, at minimum. Escape blast in the previous round, ignite your blast to remove the escape blast penalty or bring it back up to 50%. Spend all your meter or combo blasted to finish out the round, ignite your blast to get back into the meter cycle and not fall behind your opponent. Even in cases where you decide you are going to ignite player or assist for round 2, when you get into the third final round, you should always ignite your blast at least once in order to maintain the opportunity for both your hits to be rewarding and open up any comeback opportunities that come from escape blasting. And that's pretty much everything. There's a whole metagame for round 2 and 3, where the winner of round 2 wants to build meter to steamroll in round 3 if possible, and find ways to get the loser of round 1 to waste as much resources as possible. But with these basic guidelines laid out, you can kind of figure out how to play round 2 and 3 to your character's strengths, and get a feel for it based on how this system mechanics sort of snowball and work. And to summarize this video's points one more time, Power Blast in round 1 and as early as possible. This is so we have more time to build blasts after. Try not to spend meter until you're out of power up state, the state you enter after Power Blast. On hits, try to spend more than 1 bar per hit. If you are winning a round, or take hold of the round's momentum and your opponent reaches anywhere between 45 to 60% health, you should try to find a trump install spot during your next combo. This will create a next hit kill situation while creating checkmate style offense that can bait out blast, trumps, and other defensive mechanics. You can combo blast with blasts available to extend your current combo, as well as enter a burst lock state where the opponent cannot escape blast. All EX moves chained during burst lock are unburstable. If your opponent is about to kill you and isn't linking EX moves together to do so, you can escape blast to get out of the situation. If you are losing a round, note that comeback mechanics greatly favor you. Free push block, faster blast gen, and increased damage below 30% health allows you to turn the round around in your favor. At the end of a round, if your blast and meter are low, if you've escape blasted, or if you're going into round 3 and you haven't done it yet, you should be igniting your blast. Ignition lets you choose between 3 different buffs, but blast is the most important due to it letting you create comeback situations even more frequently while you're behind. And that's it. If you digested even 20% of this, you're likely in a great spot for picking up Dengeki, and you'll definitely be able to enjoy it more, even if you find out it's not for you later on. There's a lot I went over, so don't worry too much about not digesting everything without playing yet. As long as you're power blasting as early as possible, spending 1 bar per combo, trumping after 2 to 3 combos, and igniting your blast at the end of the round, I think you'll be able to put everything else in place, and maybe even just do 1 more rewatch if you find it's necessary. And that's it. Thanks for watching.